es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente.
All right.
Whoa. Test? Oh, I think I know what it is.
Test. Test. Okay. We'll wait till you get ready. Just give me a thumbs up. Oh, perfect timing. Good morning. We're having a little technical difficulty, so that's perfect timing. Okay, I'd like to call the December 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission meeting to order, and roll call, please.
Good morning and thank you. Commissioner McGordy.
Here.
Commissioner Horsley.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Present.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Kristen.
Here. Sorry, not hearing much. But
Commissioner Crane.
Present.
Chair Mulhern. And apologies from Commissioner Roden. She's absent today.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 2, public expression. The commission welcomes participation in the LAFCO meeting. Any person may address the commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO which is not on the agenda. There's a 3-minute limit and no action will be taken at this meeting. If there are any members of the public on Zoom that wish to speak, they can use the raise hand feature or press *9 on their telephone. We have no members of the public in the audience, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. So with that, we'll move on to item number 3. There is no matters of other business in the consent calendar. Items 4A, November 4th, 2024, regular meeting summary. Item 4B, the November claims and financial report. Item 4C, the 2025 calendar of regular commission meetings. Item 4D, certificate of appreciation for Commissioner McGordy. And item 4E, certificate of appreciation for Commissioner Christian. Are there any items that board members wish to pull for separate consideration or discussion?
I have questions on
Commissioner Ward.
4B and 4C.
Okay, please go ahead.
Excuse me. On service fees, what is the breakdown for service fees for the let's say the annexation of the Western Hills, there was some expenses. What, is it about 50%?
So our charge-out fees are 110 and 86 an hour, and the service rates are 160 and 125
So
an
it's
hour.
based on an hourly rate, not a percentage of,
Correct.
okay. Also, what is the policy? I assume there were some legal fees for the reviewing the staff report for the Western Hills. Isn't that part of the application process? Why we have to pay $495 to our attorney to review something for the Western Hills?
That is at times a gray area as how we split that out. We did include it as part of the general services this time because of the legal counsel was working through some of the questions that we had on how to present the findings for that application.
Okay. Yeah, it's something, I mean, our attorney fees are quite high this past month, and I noticed there was quite a bit of, it seemed like some areas that could have been charged to the applicant. Okay, I guess that's an answer, but I'd rather see it the other way, but I don't have any more comments on 4B, but on 4C, I'd like to just throw it out there. I know we have our calendar year for next year for the 12 months. Is it, again, throw it out there, can we meet at 10 instead of 9? I think in the years ago, we did do 10 o'clock, but just make it a little easier. And you didn't bring this up to me, Uma, but I know it'd be really advantageous for you coming all the way from Covelo each meeting, but I just thought I'd throw it out.
I think that benefits a lot of retired people that we have on our board. Commissioner Gonzalez and then Commissioner Horsley.
I think, given the weather sometimes up here, that regarding that.
Okay, did you have any other
I
items?
did. I just wanted to, E&E, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank both these gentlemen for their service. Really appreciate your perspective up here when you brought up. I know that you advocate for your respective groups at times, and appreciate the insight you've both brought.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Horsley.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, piggybacking on one of your comments, if the charge is for trying to figure out how LAFCO deals with a certain application, to me that would be charged to LAFCO because that's not directly related to responding to the applicant. It's trying to figure out what we need to do. So I just see a difference there. The other thing is I also want to say how much I've appreciated working with you and meeting you and working with these two gentlemen. So I thank you for your service.
So you and I have a long history, going back to about 1990. So anyway, now I know what LAFCO is and what they do. So it's been a really good experience. Thank you.
You'll be following us, right?
Of course.
Commissioner Ward.
I just want to remind too that the city owes us some money, and it's been a couple of months now, so need to get that check in for $2,000.
I'll be picking up that check after our meeting today.
Thank you.
It's, the check is being hand-delivered, actually.
It's in the room.
It's in the audience.
Good job.
It's not in the mail.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. And yes, thank you, commissioners, for serving with us on LAFCO. I did want to invite a motion, and per Commissioner Ward's suggestion, if he wants to make the motion, I think that our executive director might need to work with county staff to see if a 10 a.m. slot is possible, because we have media representatives and that type of thing, before we can move forward with that, or if we would need to have a separate agenda item.
Well, I think that I know there's an MCOG meeting scheduled for the same day, so I'll probably need to bring it, confirm with county and then bring it back. So that would leave us a 2-hour slot rather than
3 hours.
a 3-hour slot.
They meet at 12 o'clock.
They meet at 1, but
1
staff
o'clock?
needs a lunch break.
I see. Because we're normally out of here by 11
Typically.
most days. So we'll table it then till we get a report back in January?
We could split the difference and go 9:30.
Okay.
But yes, I think I'll bring it back at the next meeting after I confirm with staff.
Okay, and I also would, I guess, per the discussion about the calendar, just like the board to possibly consider maybe meeting bi-monthly if we're not having agenda items. Certainly, we can cancel a meeting if we don't need to. It seems like because I guess that's a better future conversation, because if we're going to shorten the meetings, then that wouldn't work. But if we have a meeting at 9 o'clock every other month, then maybe that's also an alternative suggestion that we can discuss possibly next year when there may be new board commissioner members that might want to have that conversation. So I guess future agenda item. And I'd just be looking for a motion to approve this agenda item as it is today.
So move. I also like the idea of discussing it with the new board. If you're going to make changes in scheduling.
I'll second.
Okay, for the full consent calendar, Commissioner Christian.
Oh, I was just going to add that it would make things easier for people who live maybe in Fort Bragg or Hudson Valley or other parts of the county to participate if the meeting were. I would urge putting it off just to facilitate participation. For you folks who live here in Ukiah, or maybe even Willits, right? Half an hour from where I live, Fort Bragg, I think is a bit of a hike. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, we appreciate that. Okay, roll call, please, for the consent calendar.
I just would like to note that I understand that we're having a video and audio cutting out. I don't know if Scott can hear. The video is cutting out for those online.
Uma, this is Marcia. I can't see the video. I can hear you fine, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We got a gremlin in the.
Jen, do you want to do roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Crane, Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Chair Mulhern.
Yes,
Motion passes. Thank you.
thank you, and it does look like the video situation has been corrected, hopefully. We can move on to item number 5. There are no public hearing items, and number 6, there are no workshop items today. Item number 7A is the proposed amendments to indemnification policies. E.O. Hinman, do you want to kick this off?
Yes, thank you. Historically, Mendocino-LAFCO had included an indemnity clause in the agreement required for processing of applications, similar to other local government entities. However, in early 2021, a court ruling in San Luis Obispo County determined that LAFCOs did not have express authority to require indemnification, and as a result, Mendocino-LAFCO revised its indemnity policies in May of 2021, shifting to a voluntary indemnity agreement. In response to that court ruling, CALAFCO sponsored Senate Bill 1209 to amend the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act and codify LAFCO's authority to require indemnity. The governor signed that legislation in September of this year, and staff is bringing forward draft indemnity policy revisions for commission consideration. The full text of SB 1209 is in your packet on page 24, and the new legislation goes into effect on January 1st of 2025. The amendments proposed are identified on page 20 of your packets and include a revised policy 11.4.2 to again include an indemnity clause in the agreement required for applications. And additionally, the draft resolution includes rescinding policy 11.4.8, which was added in 2021 to address that voluntary indemnity agreement. Staff and legal counsel have developed these proposed policy amendments, and upon commission approval, staff will update the agreement form for implementation on January 1. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there commissioners that have questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Ward?
Am I the only one? So how will this change? Would there be any previous indemnifications we've had with previous applicants how would that change, or what would happen to those indemnifications in the past?
I believe the only one that may be affected would be the Anderson Valley CSD, and I don't, maybe Marcia can speak to this. I'm not sure if we would. Yeah, maybe Marcia could speak to this.
Yes. So if there's a previous indemnification agreement in place, this wouldn't change an existing indemnification agreement, the ones that were entered into voluntarily.
So how many were involuntary and versus not voluntary? Did anybody say, I'm not going to sign it?
I believe that all of the applications that we have remaining on file did sign the voluntary indemnification agreement, so I don't think there will be a change. The only two applications we continue to have on file are Anderson Valley CSD and the Elk County Water District.
Okay. The Senate bill, I was reading it, it said that if the LAFCO fails to notify the applicant or cooperate fully in the defense, it's not required to pay or perform any settlement relating to the agreement. So apparently we have to specify that they've been offered this indemnification, correct? Shouldn't that be in the policy?
So what that description in the Senate bill is actually the standard in any indemnification situation. The indemnified party has an obligation to immediately notify the indemnifying party that their obligation has been triggered. And then there is that additional requirement of cooperation. So oftentimes there are settlement negotiations and that sort of thing. So I believe that notification requirement arises at the time when the indemnification obligation is triggered.
Okay, I trust that that'll work.
Thank you. Commissioner Horsley?
Marcia, so does this cover every action of LAFCO or just certain actions?
Well, it's in an application situation. So when you have an applicant, then this mandatory indemnification agreement is part of that application process.
Okay, so if LAFCO makes a decision, any and every decision LAFCO makes on that application is covered under this, or is that separate?
Yeah, so any approvals any approval by the LAFCO of the application would be covered by the indemnification agreement. So if someone challenged the approval, say they filed a CEQA challenge or a challenge alleging that there was a violation of Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg, then all of those sort of legal attacks on the approval are covered by the indemnification agreement.
Okay, so what if we denied an application and the agency turned around and sued us, or there was some legal action? Is that agency can't pay for their own?
Right. There There are some indemnification agreements that agencies put together where there's kind of an attempt to cover those kinds of actions as well. But generally speaking, if the disagreement is between the approving agency and the applicant, it depends on what those causes of action are. But you're right. Generally speaking, they don't indemnify for their own legal challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner questions? I'm not seeing any, and we do have a member of the public now, so I want to make sure that I invite public comment, first in the room and then online.
Thank you. Good morning to the Commission and Chair Mulhern, Craig Slaughter, Community Development Director with the City of Ukiah. Really, the commissioners who have spoken already have been making some of the points that I had some concerns about. First off, I didn't see a policies and procedures item on this, and we've had some excellent discussion, debate, just like a democratic process on some of these meetings that we've really benefited from. And, I would emphasize and encourage the Commission to potentially think about doing that here, taking a pause on this until next year. If you'd like to, make sure you're in compliance on January 1, my suggestion would be to look at the language proposed in the state law and just duplicate that language. And I want to tell you why I see that as being important. So one point here that was made in the staff report is that, cities and counties require indemnification language, and that's true. However, if you look at the language within the proposed policy by staff and by legal counsel, it's quite a bit more broad than what cities and counties require in their indemnification clauses. So I pulled Mendocino counties, and I pulled, of course, City of Ukiah. I'll just read here really quick. This is from the cities. It says, purpose of which, so I'm not going to read the whole sentence here, but defend, indemnify, hold harmless, et cetera, the purpose of which is to attack, set aside, void, or annul any approval of the application or related decision. And a lot of times in cities and counties, it's related to the exact approval of the item that's before the, in many cases, City Council or Planning Commission, or any related CEQA challenge. But if you look at the language proposed in the policy here by staff, it just says, in connection with the applicant's proposal or request for services, which seems fairly broad and not necessarily tied to the application approval. So, would suggest again that, potentially just hold off for a month. And if you wanted to adopt language to be in compliance on January 1, just pull the language directly from the law, which is actually consistent with what I described with the city and the county. It's related to the approval of the application by LAFCO. So that's my comments, but happy to take any questions or discuss further. Thanks.
Marcia, do you have any thoughts about the language that's been proposed versus what Director Slaughter is speaking about?
Yeah, so the policy, the language in this policy that is proposed today is broader than the language that that was just cited to you. In the indemnification agreement itself, the specifications there are for the approval. I mean, it's the action that could be challenged is an approval by the LAFCO. So it's true, most indemnification agreements do refer to an approval because it's at that point when the commission has taken action that there could be a legal challenge. There are certain situations and where an opponent of a project or a proponent of a project who isn't the applicant may bring a cause of action that isn't challenging an approval directly. They're unusual situations. My preference is to have a slightly broader policy language, But we will ensure that the indemnification agreement itself is consistent with what is provided in the new legislation.
Thank you, and I'll accept full responsibility for this coming straight to the board instead of having a policies and procedures meeting. I think that, yeah, that was my call, and so take responsibility for that. Any other questions from commissioners?
Are you suggesting it should go
Commissioner
back
Ward? No, I'm not. I'm suggesting we should,
to deal with it?
I personally am not going to make a motion until I hear from the other commissioners, Commissioner Horsley and Commissioner Gonzalez.
Well, I guess it's a little concerning for me to hear that it's broader and it'll be taken care of, or it'll be narrowed down in the application process itself. That I find a little concerning. So I'm afraid I'm not an expert in any of this. So it does seem really broad, and I would like to hear a little bit more about why, and if we're going to narrow it down in the application process, why not have that in the policy?
I think Marcia or EO Hinman can follow up on that, but I did just hear her say that is because there may be additional circumstances that come up beyond what Director Schlatter was speaking to, where you would want a broader policy to be in place. And then for a specific application, that's when you would handle it through the agreement and make it more narrow. But EO Hinman or
Yeah, maybe I can try to clarify a little bit. We have an agreement to pay form that in the past was called agreement to pay and indemnify. There was an indemnity clause within that agreement to pay form that is part of our application process and required for all application submittals. We removed that in 2021 and changed that to a voluntary indemnity agreement. And so this will be putting back the indemnity clause, which is quite a bit more detailed than the policy language here. In the past, that has always been something that was developed between staff and legal counsel to ensure that all the clauses in the agreement to pay and indemnify form were appropriate.
and
So, and
Commissioner, go ahead, Marcia, and then I'll have Commissioner Gonzalez and Commissioner Crane.
Okay, yeah, so I also want to point out, this essentially reverts back to the language that we had for our voluntary indemnification agreements. And it was the same language. It was for reasonable expenses and attorney's fees incurred from proceedings brought by a third party in connection with the application. So even in our previous policy, which was for the voluntary indemnification agreement, this was the same language. This is also consistent with languages that's being used, sort of readopted by many of the other LAFCOs.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, I was kind of under the impression that we were just kind of rubber stamping what the state was doing. Is there a way to put our agreement on our website so that whoever comes forward knows ahead of time what, is it a boilerplate sort of document that sits out there as part of the packet?
Yes,
Or is it done?
it is on our website. And with adoption of this policy, we would update that indemnity clause within that agreement to pay form, and it would be posted on our website.
I mean, wearing my LAFCO hat, I would want broad. Wearing my city hat, I guess I'd want it more narrow. But I think I'm wearing my LAFCO hat right now, so.
Commissioner Crane?
Question is, the legislation is, we're not exceeding the scope of the legislation by having it be broader?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Ward.
So I still want to know why you'd rather not go through the policy and bring it right to us.
Well, it's too late now. When I discussed that with E.O. Hinman, I actually was thinking that this was something that had previously been discussed, and that the update, I guess, seemed to me to have it more broad and then narrow when it's a specific application made sense. I don't know, E.O. Hinman, Do you want to help me out a little bit with this? I was
Sure.
avoiding an additional meeting essentially, but apparently that was not the
Correct. So
direction you all were looking for.
But we didn't want to meet, so let's just put it to the commission. so
Well, we
don't
can have
another
it,
meeting.
we can have the
Well,
discussion here. I mean,
Okay.
this is why we're here. We can have the discussion in public. Sure, it might get a little bit messy, but that's what this board is for, to have these conversations.
So
it was,
Chair,
there were a few reasons. One, that it was kind of up against the holiday season. And so we did talk about the need for running this through the Policies and Procedures Committee. We have essentially reverted to the previous language that was in our policy, which with just some very slight updates to that language. So essentially, it's going back to pre-2021 language in our policy. And similarly, we will be reverting to just slightly updated indemnity clause in our agreement to pay form. So because the revisions were so small from our previous policy and clause, I recommended to Chair Mulhern that we maybe just bring it directly to the commission instead of going through the Policies and Procedures Committee.
so Uma, I can also add one more suggestion, if it's more comfortable for the commission. We could just lift the language from the legislation, and use that in the policy. That'll be the language that will be in the indemnification agreement itself. It's more specific. I do think that this policy, again, it's the same policy that we had previously. The language of the indemnification agreement itself, which will be posted on the website, will be the language that's contained in the legislation. So if this is a real point of concern, we can use that same language in the policy.
Commissioner Horsley and Commissioner McGorty.
Thank you, Marcia, for that suggestion. I really appreciate that. I think I've made it clear that my concern has been agencies complaining about how policies have been used for certain direction in past LAFCOs based on certain staff's ideas of where things should go. So I find it critically important to be as clear as possible so that agencies aren't worried about that happening again. And Marcia, both you and Uma have been great at how you've processed things in the last couple of years that I've been on here. I cannot complain at all. So I would appreciate it being the same language as in the legislature myself.
Commissioner McGorty.
I agree. I think people should anticipate that they're not going to be asked to do something that is out of the ordinary for a LAFCO application, and having it as standardized as possible, I think makes it a little bit simpler for an applicant to anticipate what they're going to need. And if it doesn't create any, extra liability for us, then I would stick with the language that's in the state legislation.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
I was just going to move the adoption with the language in the state section.
Second.
For the clerk, that was a second from Crane. And I do have another comment, though, from Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I was going to vote no if it didn't. I would prefer going through the policy and procedure, but with Marcia's suggestion, I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Jen?
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Crane,
Aye.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley.
Yes.
Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move on to item 7B, the Round Valley County Water District Review. EO Henman. And just for future reference, Mr. Slaughter, if you'd like to have something come to the policies and procedure, definitely give us a call when the agenda's posted next time. Thanks. All right, 7B.
Thank you. As with many LAFCOs, our work plan for agencies has not been meeting the 5-year schedule for review of sphere of influences as required under the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg, primarily due to staffing and budget limitations. To help address the issues and focus resources where the studies are most beneficial, staff developed a streamlined MSR and sphere of influence review process, which was blessed by the Commission earlier this year. This new approach, which is summarized in Attachment 1 on page 29 of your agenda packet, is intended to identify those agencies that have undergone few changes since the last review, have proposed no changes to their sphere of influence, and conduct a streamlined review with a clear administrative record. In doing so, we'll then be able to focus our resources on the agencies with potential issues and/or significant changes that necessitate those comprehensive studies. The process is initiated with a questionnaire conducted during an interview with agency staff that forms the basis of the administrative record that the agency has undergone a 5-year review and that no substantial changes have been identified. Staff then brings forward the review and a recommendation to the Commission to affirm no change to the agency's current sphere of influence by resolution, and the agency is then scheduled for another review in 5 years. The first agency reviewed under this process is the Round Valley County Water District. I met with the general manager for the district, Emil Ferrara, in October to conduct an interview during which we reviewed the previous MSR and sphere of influence determinations and for any changes or updates, discussed the questionnaire and any near-term plans for the district. Staff then prepared the questionnaire with comments, which were reviewed and certified by district staff, and that certified questionnaire is included in your agenda packet as attachment 2 on page 30. As brief background on the district, the Round Valley County Water District was formed in 1948 to provide flood control and stream restoration services to landowners within the Round Valley watershed. The district encompasses about 52 square miles in the northeastern corner of the county, including the community of Covelo and foothills and the mountainous areas to the north. The district currently has a coterminous sphere. Additionally, in 2016, an outside service area was identified around the district that generally follows the watershed boundaries. The purpose of that was to recognize that the efforts of the district are best reflected at the watershed level. Revenue consists of a share of property taxes that amounts to approximately $25,000 annually, and the district has an operating budget of about $20,000 to maintain basic functions. Any projects undertaken by the district are implemented with grant funding that is acquired in partnership with other agencies and landowners. The most recent financial statements are included as attachment 3. Based on the results of the interview, the questionnaire, and a review of the current financial statements, staff has determined that no substantial changes to governance, finance, and services have occurred since the last sphere of influence review, and recommends the Commission find the review meets the intent of Government Code Section 56-425, subsection G, that requires sphere of influences for municipal service providers be reviewed every 5 years, and also to affirm no change to the district's current sphere of influence and direct staff to schedule the agency for review in another 5 years. The draft resolution is included as attachment 4 on page 52 of your packet, and the recommended actions are identified on page 26 of your packet.
Commissioner, go ahead. Commissioner Horsley.
I went back and read the 2014 MSR. Well, it wasn't that much just for Round Valley, and they also monitor wells. It was included in that at least. We are looking at them at LAFCO when they don't provide any water services, just the fact that they're remediating streams and flood control, that's part of LAFCO? I didn't realize that.
LAFCO is mandated to study all of the special districts within the county. We do prioritize municipal service providers during our 5-year review schedule, and that is by policy, set in policy. But we are required to look at all of the special districts in the county.
So even if it was a recreation district, we would look at that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you for this. I've been complaining for years about keeping up with our 5-year review. How, is other LAFCOs doing this? Is that how we got the idea?
YOLO LAFCO is doing a similar review process. It looks a little bit different, so it did take some development to get to this point. But with us, coordinating with our legal counsel, we felt this would meet the intent of the CKH, and we would be able to also streamline our work plan.
So how many other districts out there that we could possibly go through and do the same thing? Probably quite a few.
And that is possible. I think in our current work plan, we are looking at Laytonville County Water District as potentially falling within this, although we won't know until we conduct that interview.
I mean, like cemetery districts, I mean, there's a ton of them I know that haven't changed. They don't even have a board, let alone. But my concern is some of these MSRs, we come through and, they've got 3 years, or they don't have current financials, or they don't have a website. We're still going to give them the go-ahead to say that they're in compliance, but I really believe we need a sort of a tickler sheet of something that they need to come back in a year and let us know, give us an update on financials, or because we may not see this another time for 5 more years. But I'd like to know, did they end up getting a website? Did they end up, their financial statements are fairly current, but I've seen MSRs that are 3 years ago with financials, so we don't know if they're a going concern. We don't know if they've gotten worse or better. I don't want to just give them a 5-year punt and find out that there's, things that we need to really follow up with. I know we have determinations and all that, but we don't really follow up too much with those. But I think if we can make a list of things that we can just have the general managers or the board of directors or give us an update every year or something on the things that we were concerned with, specifically financials. I can't think of all the things that we were concerned with in the past with some of these that didn't have an SOI change or whatnot, but I believe that there was things that we probably need to follow up on and not wait 5 years too. So that was another concern I had. And then, yeah, I think that's it. I know there was some going concern issues with some of these districts, and just to give them 5 more years down the road until we look at it again concerns me, especially if they're getting worse, not better. And but I like the idea. I like the idea that we're doing this and keep pushing forward with keeping up to date with our MSR and SOI. Thank you. Good idea.
Commissioner Gonzalez and Commissioner McGordy.
Again, I would just want to echo what Commissioner Ward said. I thought this was the poster child for something like this, and I thought the same thing. And then kind of like, I would love to read this year from now, even if whether you bring it up at the meeting or whether anybody could scan the website and go, an addendum, an update, it says, here's the financials when they get them. That way they know it. I don't want to call it a conditional pass, but one that they get, they passed, but on the website it says they passed, but they still owe us updated financials at a certain point or something. And I know it may be a time thing with them. They may not have scheduled theirs yet, and we missed it because of this. So it may not be a nefarious thing on the part of the district. It's just we went looking at them at the time when they hadn't scheduled their audit yet. I mean, I'll tell you, Willits is behind on their audits. I think we're catching up, but so a lot of times it's not nefarious. It's just staffing or whatever. But this way, they know that they're not completely off the hook.
Commissioner McCordy?
So the Round Valley County Water District represents, you know, the only organization that deals with water in Round Valley, which, you know, is in a sense kind of concerning. And I'm thinking back from the drought ad hoc committee that I was on for a couple of years with the county, and the water security is a big issue. And right now, when we get into a drought situation, the only water that's available evidently is that you can publicly go to is from a well by the firehouse. Is that right? And
Public access, correct?
yeah, I just wonder if there's ways that we can encourage this organization to maybe take a look at that, and maybe it's not initially in their charter, but we have nobody else to work with. It's great that they're working with groundwater monitoring for CASGEM, because that's something that is the state's critically involved with, and it would concern me that if they weren't doing any monitoring, the state probably would step in and say you need to form a groundwater sustainability agency, because that's essentially what happened to Ukiah Valley. So it's good that they're doing that. The other thing I'm curious about is that if I see they're collaborating with state agencies, but there's other efforts that are going on to improve habitat in the Eel River Basin, and it's kind of a hot issue right now with the decommissioning of the Powder Valley project, with taking down Cape Horn Dam and Scott Dam. And the Round Valley Indian Tribe is very interested in trying to restore fisheries in the Eel River system, along with the North Coast Resource Partnership and also the Eel River Restoration Project. And I'm just curious if there's any discussion. Did you hear anything from them saying that they're collaborating with anyone or interested in collaborating with anyone? Because this is the time. This is when they could expand some of the services that they're doing with grant funding.
They are. They work closely with the upper, I think it's called the Upper Eel River Watershed Forum, and as well as Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they've been very successful in obtaining grants through cannabis remediation funding, as well as fish and wildlife funding, to do quite a bit of stream restoration in the valley. So they've been very successful with the grant projects, and they do all of those in collaboration with other agencies and organizations. I also wanted to note that there is a nonprofit that is formed in the valley that is focused on trying to implement a fire hydrant and emergency water source project. They have been working closely with the Covelo Community Services District. The Round Valley County Water District does not currently have any infrastructure. They recently did install some monitoring wells, and they do work closely with Department of Water Resources on their data collection in the CASGEM system. But as far as infrastructure for any kind of movement of water or anything, they don't have anything like that. The Covelo Community Services District has a wastewater system, so they do have operators on staff, as well as familiarity with infrastructure. So the nonprofit organization in Covelo is working closely with the CSD to develop feasibility studies, and hopefully in the future will come to LAFCO for activation of powers to provide that water service, at least for the fire hydrant system.
Yeah, I would hope through the Department of Water Resources SAFER program that they'd be able to qualify for some of this as a severely, what's the right term, economically disadvantaged community. So I'm concerned about that every community in Mendocino County has access to a safe potable water supply, and Covelo is particularly at risk, and I'm hoping somebody will step up, and anything we can do to urge them or help them is both Mendocino Board of Supervisors, who historically haven't been particularly interested in it. You know, I hope that water security becomes something that's an important issue in the future. It certainly has been for me the 4 years that I've served.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any additional pins. I appreciate the simplicity of this platform, and I think it's able to answer a lot of questions commissioners would have about agencies when they do reviews. I also agree that we do want to make sure we're following up with agencies to get updated with their audits and also web-based platforms. And I understand for small agencies that can feel very overwhelming. There is an online platform that's pretty affordable called Civ Assist, and it just helps you do your agenda, post things online. And I think maybe if we can find that or other platforms to recommend to these small agencies that are affordably priced, where they can make sure that they're being transparent. And it's in 2025, our lives are incredibly digital, and so I appreciate that a small community like Round Valley, people can go to an agency and read an agenda, but I think it's also important, especially in rural areas, to have access online so that they can read what's coming up without having to go physically to a location to see what's on the agenda. And Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thanks. The recommended action has two parts. So how can we implement some of the things that I brought up and Maureen brought up with regard to that? Because it's more than just websites and financials. It could be not having enough board of directors, or it could be not having a general manager or something. So how can we make a file so that every year staff's looking to make contact with the district and say, hey, what's got any updates?
One of the items on our annual work program this year is a continuity plan, which is to basically would be our tickler file and an annual report to the commission on all of these items that we as staff have been directed to follow up on. So that is something that we're developing. If you wanted to add something to the recommended action, we could ask for a one-year follow-up or include a one-year follow-up in the action.
I think that would be important for this one and anything going forward. It streamlines the process, but it also keeps us in tune with what's going on and not just sit around waiting for 5 years to come about and see what they've done. Because there's a lot of things that these they need a little push sometimes to get these. And I know they have lack of staff and all, but it's really important that the public knows that they can access their website or know when the meetings are, or if they're lacking quorums or financial information. If we could incorporate that, I would.
Commissioner Christian.
So I'm kind of confused by this, and I apologize. But it seems to me we really don't have any enforcement authority, right? So we're mandated to do these municipal service reviews every 5 or 10, I guess. Is there any value to have an agency like this commit publicly saying, I mean, out of this process, do we have any commitment from them to do a website or to provide financials on a particular basis?
They are required to, all special districts are required to submit annual financial reports to the county auditor. And as such, we can get copies of it that way or through the state controller's website. As far as a commitment on a website, they do meet the requirements under the statute by adopting a hardship resolution every year, stating that they're unable to afford a website and on a budget of about $20,000. I will say that our website, we do through Streamline, which is $115 a month. That's a significant percentage of an annual budget if your annual budget's $20,000.
Right. So realistically, they're doing what they can to meet the requirements of financial reporting and the website. So, I mean,
And those are some of
Do-
the things that we look at when we do this streamlined review. These are questions that we ask the district and would call those out if it was not being done.
so, I mean, is it realistic? I mean, is there real value in tracking whether they comply or not? And putting our staff to sort of bird dogging this? I'm just questioning.
Don't we have the ability not to approve an SOI or if they don't provide the information?
If they, maybe our legal counsel can speak to that.
So I think the last question was if they don't provide the information during this process where, for instance, UMA's gathering the information, going over the questionnaire with them, if they were to say, we're not going to provide you with that information, that's true. I mean, we could not move forward with that process for them. This issue of enforcement, LAFCO does not have enforcement authority. One of the purposes, though, of the annual, I mean, the 5-year MSR and SOI updates is to identify significant problems. And if those problems aren't remedied, if they're identified and brought to light in that document, and they're not remedied, then there are processes that involve a LAFCO initiated dissolution of a district, which is a very extreme situation. Essentially, LAFCO staff is able to provide some support, particularly with a small district like this that is, struggling with, where to put the dollars, should they invest in a website, et cetera. UMA is a really good resource for them. And I understand you don't want to have her spending a tremendous amount of her time just sort of assisting folks with those kinds of issues. But a check-in once a year might give them an opportunity to ask questions or get some guidance from her on a good way to handle some of these issues.
That's where I was heading with it. I know we don't have the enforcement, but sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Every year you're reminding them, hey, maybe a new board member didn't know what we did the year before. So we know I get a new board member in there to say, hey, we need to take care of this. That's all I'm pushing for, is get the information.
Make them more aware of.
Yeah, make them aware of what we're lacking.
I mean, ideally, if we had resources to build websites cheaply or provide those services, it's counsel them on.
Well, there's also districts that can pool together and maybe have one website for two or three districts, things like that.
I've pinned up from Commissioner McGordy, Horsley, and Gonzalez.
So I was wondering, even for LAFCO, could you have a web page for some of these hardship cases that, is kind of like an addendum or information spot or links to the ones that exist so that people want to find out what's going on with a particular community service district, they can find it via LAFCO.
We do have all of the special districts listed on our website, and they are linked to a contact if they do not have a web page. Also, the Round Valley Area MAC, Municipal Advisory Committee, maintains a website and provides that opportunity for local, I think the CSD takes advantage of it. They have a landing page with their agenda on it and contact information for each of the special districts. And they also maintain a calendar that has all of the community meetings on that.
Commissioner Horsley.
I just wanted to follow up on something you said, the follow-up for a year. I can understand if it looks like they're not going to be able to pay their bills the next year or whatever, but if they have a website and everything's fine, you're not suggesting we follow up every year with them?
No, just the things that they were lacking. And I can't think of all the determinations that we've come up with, but there's quite a few that we know that they're not keeping up with. For instance, financials.
Mm-hmm.
Just give us time you get an update, send it in, and we'll put it in the system.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that.
And Commissioner Gonzalez.
You know, and I think that the more that it's talked about, I mean, I think in the old world, we could have a meeting and nobody would come to our meeting and nobody would hear about it unless the newspaper happened to be here. But now with everything being online, you can just plug in you know, if you're a new resident to Covell or you're a new resident, you can just type in, who is my provider or who does this? There'll be a record that LAFCO talked about it, and in that respect, even if it's a quick phone call once a year and it made it into our minutes, I think that it'll be out there for the community, and that's who really we're doing this for, is the taxpayers, the ratepayers that are out there in these different outlying areas. And so it's better than nothing that they get some information, and at least that way they know. And I think I had asked the same thing before about LAFCO's website and hosting, but it sounds like we're doing the best we can do for them. And obviously some of these folks can do a little more outreach in their own communities. So thank you.
Great. This is a really good discussion, and I think a test case for what we should be doing. Commissioner Ward.
I just say that I know I have to be realistic. I mean, nobody reads our MSRs anyway, so we just do need to get some of these feedback from these districts, though, to help out a little bit. But yeah, nobody reads them and whatnot, but it is something we put a lot of effort in. Let's try to make them as accurate as possible. That's all I got to say.
Well, I do hope that's not the case, Commissioner Ward. I think that people do rely on them quite a bit. I know that state legislatures do look at them, and also they are referred to by the districts themselves quite often when they're developing their grant applications at minimum. So.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, there's not a nobody. There's somebody. Somebody is paying attention out there. Okay, well, at this time, I'm looking for a motion, maybe an amendment to the recommended action or approval of the recommended action, and staff can take the direction of the board. Commissioner Gonzalez. Oh, we do need public comment. Apologies. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment? No one is coming forward, and we have no hands raised on Zoom.
All right, then I would like to move staff recommendations with the one-year tickler.
Great.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Christian,
Yes.
Commissioner Crane,
Aye.
Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
and Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Uma, for bringing this up. It's great to know we're moving forward with these. There'll hopefully be a lot more, right?
I hope so.
Okay. We can move on to agenda item number 8. We'll start with 8A, work plan, current and future proposals.
Thank you, Chair Mulhern. We have nothing new to report for applications, other than we did get through the City of Ukiah's Western Hill application, and we're almost through the reconsideration period, so we'll be completing that project in the next couple of weeks. We continue to make progress on the work plan. We're developing administrative draft studies for the Russian River Flood Control and the Potter Valley Irrigation District, and are trying to schedule a meeting with Laytonville County Water District in the coming month. We are still waiting for responses for information requests from the Elk County Water District, and we're working with Irish Beach Water District to prepare the public hearing draft to bring forward to the Commission. We're also continuing to work on the Westport County Water District on their administrative draft. Our intent is to bring Irish Beach to the public hearing at our next regularly scheduled meeting. And can answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. Oh, Commissioner Ward.
What's the problem with the elk? It's been 2 years, 2.5 years.
So Irish Beach and Elk County Water District have in the past shared a general manager, and that general manager is in the process of retiring. So there is he's trying to finish that up before he leaves at the end of this year. However, he has a lot on his plate right now as far as the transition.
Same thing with Anderson Valley too?
The application,
Yeah.
that is tied up with the tax share agreement, and also we're waiting for some revisions to the map from the district.
I was going to comment that there are two items here that affect the Anderson Valley, or Anderson Valley community. One is the sphere of influence, and the other one is the water and wastewater project. Now, where does that stand? And I think we're in the CEQA phase of that project. And do you know where that?
We haven't had an update in quite some time. The last I heard, it was in the CEQA preparation part of the project, and I think it had something to do with identification of locations for the
It's
facilities.
the engineers that are managing that process.
Correct.
Riley and Race. It's a project that's dear to my heart, and since I'm leaving you, I would urge you to do whatever you can to expedite this if we can get it out of the engineers' hands. To have a challenge in managing those engineers, getting them to produce stuff on a regular basis, but be it as it may. But since I have a minute, with your permission, I'd just like to say I really enjoyed being on the commission. It's a real privilege to serve the community, and it's all about service. And I thank all of you very much. I'll miss coming to these meetings.
You can still come.
Indeed, I could. But
you.
10 o'clock start would be a lot easier.
You
Thank
could stay home in your pajamas and turn it on YouTube. E.O. Henman, was there anything else on the work plan?
No, nothing.
Okay. Item 8B, any correspondence?
None?
And 8C, CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
Nothing new to report. Their legislative committee is starting to meet again, and I should have a report on their efforts next time.
Great. And AD, anything to add for your verbal report?
Just that I'm still trying to coordinate with the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District on initiating that MSR, and so what next steps need to occur. We were asked to wait until the negotiation period with the Adventist Health had been completed. I think that ends in the next week or two, so I will be following up with her again to see what next steps we can take to get that initiated. As you recall, we had let the grand jury know that we would be starting that MSR this month.
So,
Yeah, Commissioner Ward?
yeah, we haven't responded to the grand jury yet, have they? At what point do they say, sorry, we would need something?
So we did provide them a written response committing to beginning the MSR by the end of this year. I think if we are delayed, that we would need to send written correspondence to the grand jury
letter.
to that effect, yes.
Well, the wheels run real slow, don't they? Jeez.
Thank you. As noted, item 8E, we did not have a committee meeting. So are there any committee reports or committee item suggestions, I guess? Seeing none. 8F is commissioner reports, comments, or questions. Commissioner McGordy.
First of all, this is my last meeting, and I just want to say thank you to Uma. This is a model organization in terms of how things are set up, how our procedures go, our planning, knowing what's going on, accessibility to information from our executive director, or executive officer, sorry. And I just want to tell you that since my wife is on the Mendocino Coast Health Care District, I tell her, take a look at LAFCO if you want to see how an organization is run well. And so I just want you to know you got a fan out here. I've also really enjoyed working with all of you. This is, you know, one of those organizations most people don't even know exists, much less what they do and how they function. And and maybe our MSRs aren't in the top 10 reading lists, but they are important, and they're important because they're a record, which is something that is really, really difficult for Mendocino County, is to find a stable record of things that have happened in the past that gives us a sort of a memory. So we have an institutional memory of how things have happened. And it does involve public money, since all these special districts take taxpayer dollars. It's really important that there's some accountability, and that's what we do. And it's done well, as far as I can tell. It depends on cooperation from very small entities that aren't properly staffed and don't have everything right. But at least there's somebody who's trying to hold them accountable. And, you know, I appreciate the effort that goes into it. I have really long-term concerns about water in Mendocino County. You might have noted that. You might have picked that up. Because it's so funny. We live in a place where just absolutely downpours. I mean, as an example, we completely filled Scott Dam in that last rainstorm. So a lot of water goes through the Eel River watershed. When we think about having a diversion to the Russian River from the Eel River Basin, if it's done right, it's not much impact. The fish will be fine. We'll have water. Our economy moves on. These things get deeply controversial. I'm really, really concerned about communities like Mendocino that at the moment are depending on 1850s technology to supply water it's not compliant at all with what the state wants, with a 50-foot sanitary seal on all wells, because the water table is at 20 feet. So if you put the seal in, you go past the water table. And these are things that need fixing. And, you know, it's having our MSRs on coastal water districts shows us we got problems, and they're fixable, but there has to be a will, first of all, to have the information, and second of all, to take the next steps to have a policy that repairs it. We have no capacity inside of Mendocino County government at the moment to address that. It's kind of left up to individual special districts, to community service districts to fix things. And just watching Anderson Valley go through their machinations, they were working on this 4 years ago when I got on the board, and I thought, well, they should have this wrapped up in a year or two. And here we are 4 years later. Looks like it's about the same.
And Chair Valhanel told the board at the last meeting, he doesn't think it's going to be filled. And
yeah.
And that's a guesstimate, because they're unwilling to come up with a project plan with, you know, milestones and timelines. There's kind of it's not really being managed.
So this is
it's
kind
too
of,
bad.
it's a whole different topic, and I really don't want to bring us down with that right now. But I just want to point out that this at least represents some level of order, and I really appreciate everything that's being done. It's very, very important work. I'm hoping someday that we'll be able to reinvigorate the Mendocino County Water Agency to actually take an active role, to be funded with more than $150,000 a year and only a part-time staff, because this is essential to our economic well-being and health and human safety. So anyway, thank you all for working with me and putting up with my occasional idiosyncrasies, and I've enjoyed working with this group a lot. You've grown on me. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you too, Glenn, and for your support. Also, I'm hoping you stay in the water, water issues, because you've put a lot of effort into it. We need people like you to stay at it.
I plan on volunteering my services as a water policy advisor to the Board of Supervisors for at least a couple of years, because there's a lot of stuff up here that nobody else has.
Good.
So at least for the short term, I'll be engaged as sort of backup. I mean, I'm kind of jealous whenever we meet on Russian River water issues, and Sonoma County Water Agency walks in with about 10 people, and we have 1 or 2, and they're electeds, and their electeds never need to show because they have so much staff. So, you know, we need help, and I'm dedicated to giving it.
And we might need you as a public member in the future. You will be part of the agreement. I'm not going to be here forever.
What are you saying, Jerry?
It feels like forever already.
Okay, and the board did, or the commission did approve our calendar earlier in this meeting, and I'll just note that historically, the January meeting is canceled because commissioners won't be seated until, the Board of Supervisors commissioners wouldn't be seated until January 7th, which is the day after the LAFCO meeting. Some city council members and other special districts members may already be in their positions, but
You're saying there's no.
I'm look forward to a canceled meeting in January. I'm sure that E.L. Hinman will follow up, though that was not agendized, and I'm I just want to prepare you for when I'm canceling meetings and not having meetings. A heads up. And with that, meeting is adjourned unless there's public comment on this. Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.